12 years ago, there was a suspenseful anime, deeply loved by netizens, but before the story begins, I want to ask you, do you like long-handled umbrellas? In 1972, at Yomiyama North Middle School, Class 3C, there was a student named Masaki who tragically passed away, but strangely, in the corner of the graduation photo, Masaki's figure appeared, her face, pale like a dead person's, staring at you with a chilling smile. However, in the following months, students from Class 3C and their family members would inexplicably die, as if this was the beginning of a disaster. The time has come to April 1998. Kuchi's mother passed away early. His father worked away, so he had to move in with his aunt, and transferred to Yomiyama North Middle School Class 3C. But not long after starting school, he fell ill and was admitted to the hospital. Many classmates came to visit, but one female classmate suddenly asked Kuchi if he had lived in this town before. Kuchi told her that he had moved from another city and was staying at his aunt's house. But at night, Kuchi encountered strange occurrences. The elevator that was empty before, yet a girl with an eye patch suddenly appeared, her school uniform revealing she was also a student at Yomiyama North Middle School. The girl seemed vacant, clutching a worn-out doll in her hand, heading alone towards the basement's second floor. However, the second basement floor was the mortuary area. Driven by curiosity, Kuchi couldn't help but ask the girl for her name. The girl gradually walked into the darkness, and then she uttered her name, Misaki. Time quickly moved on to May. Kuchi was finally discharged from the hospital. Before starting school, Aunt advised Kuchi to abide by the class rules. His grandparents also doted on him, but his grandfather knelt before his mother's memorial tablet every day, seemingly burdened by something. When Kuchi arrived at the class, he found that the girl he had encountered last month was actually in the same class as him. The teacher then expressed hope that the classmates could get along well and graduate healthy together next year. Although it seemed like a beautiful blessing, listening to it made people feel somewhat uneasy because the atmosphere in the class was always gloomy, suggesting that it might be unlikely for the students to graduate in good health. However, Kuchi paid particular attention to Misaki, who sat at the back of the class. During physical education class, Kuchi sat aside to rest, when Kuchi curiously asked the class president, Sakuragi, about Misaki. Sakuragi suddenly displayed a panicked expression, as if she was extremely afraid to hear that name. Yet she also seemed as if she had never seen that person before. Kuchi was very puzzled, as Misaki had just been sitting in the classroom. So, he decided to directly approach Misaki and ask her. However, what Misaki said next made Kuchi break out in a cold sweat. Misaki stated that their Class 3C was very close to death. Although Misaki's words terrified Kuchi, his curiosity overcame his fear, and he wanted to find out more about Misaki from his classmates, but it seemed like none of them wanted to talk about her. Therefore, Kuchi had no choice but to inquire with the nurse he had met during his hospital stay. He asked her to check if any girl had passed away in April, because he had witnessed it himself. Misaki heading alone towards the mortuary, while waiting for the nurse's message, Kuchi followed Misaki to a doll shop. At that moment, the phone rang, and it was the nurse calling. She informed him that she had found a lead. Indeed, a girl had passed away in April, and her name was actually Misaki. The nurse's words sent a chill down Kuchi's spine. However, curiosity still triumphed over fear, so Kuchi proceeded to the doll shop. The doll models of girls placed around the shop emanated a strange aura, and even the shop owner exuded an eerie vibe. The shop owner informed Kuchi that there were no other customers today, and that he was free to look around. However, Kuchi had clearly seen Misaki come here. Soon enough, Kuchi noticed a peculiar doll. This doll bore an uncanny resemblance to Misaki. At that moment, Misaki suddenly emerged from behind the dolls. She then took off her eye mask. Misaki told him that her left eye can see spirits, which is why she always wore the mask at school. She shared with him the legend of Class 3C from that year. A girl also named Misaki died in an accident, but shortly after, she appeared in the class graduation photo. In an instant, the entire school was engulfed in the legend of Misaki's resurrection. However, the most terrifying part was the continuation of this tale. Just as Misaki was about to reveal what followed to Kuchi, the shop owner announced closing time and ushered Kuchi out. The next day, Kuchi returned to school, wanting to ask his classmates about Misaki. His classmates said that resurrection was a common occurrence, but they didn't mention anything about Misaki. They told Kuchi not to inquire about someone who didn't exist. Soon, Kuchi faced his first exam, but Misaki had already left the examination room. Seeing this, Kuchi immediately followed her and asked her why his classmates and teachers seemed unable to see her. But Misaki's reply sent shivers down Kuchi's spine because she didn't exist. No one could see her, only Kuchi could see her. After hearing her words, Kuchi felt that the Misaki in front of him was the girl who had died years ago. At that moment, the class president, Sakuragi, also left the exam room. She seemed to perceive Misaki's presence, as if she had been frightened. She turned and walked away, but in the next moment, an accident occurred. The authorities classified this death incident as an accidental death, but Kuchi didn't believe that, because he suddenly remembered the words Misaki had told him. She said Class 3C was the closest place to death. In the evening, while chatting with Aunt, Kuchi learned that his mother was actually a student in Class 3C in 1973, while Aunt herself was a student in Class 3C in 1983. Perhaps Aunt knew the ins and outs of the whole matter, but when Kuchi wanted to ask Aunt about these things, she suddenly got a headache and couldn't remember anything. Soon, it was June 3rd. Another accident occurred near the school, where a nurse, riding in an old elevator, died on the spot due to the outdated facilities. And the authorities once again ruled it as an accidental death. But what was even more eerie was that nurse's brother was a classmate of Kuchi's. This incident was also linked to Class 3C. With several funerals taking place, the atmosphere in the whole town became extremely somber. When Kuchi returned to school, he found the classroom empty. At that moment, the whole class was holding a secret meeting behind Kuchi's back. Izumi was elected as the new class president. She ordered the classmates to stay away from and ignore Kuchi, treating him as if he didn't exist. This behavior seemed oddly familiar to Kuchi, and he couldn't understand why they were acting this way. Meanwhile, Takabayashi in the class had had enough of everything. He decided to reveal the truth, but before he could speak, he collapsed from a heart attack and died. And thus, another student from Class 3C died in an accident. After this incident, all the classmates started ignoring Kuchi. He could come and go in the class without anyone paying attention. At this point, Kuchi seemed to understand everything, that he and Misaki had become the same kind of people, but there was an advantage to this. It meant Kuchi could have more interactions with Misaki to investigate the truth behind it all. And after several days of interaction, Kuchi finally learned the truth from Misaki. Turns out, Misaki wasn't a ghost at all, but like Kuchi, she was also someone ignored by the classmates. And all of this was closely tied to the curse of Class 3C, going back 26 years. Since the deceased girl suddenly appeared in the graduation photo, a curse began to loom over the entire Class 3C. Class 3C has always had 35 students, but every school year, mysteriously, an extra person appears in the class. This person is known as the deceased. The deceased is always a student of that class, and later meets a strange and tragic demise for various reasons. When the deceased returns from the dead that year, all records about this person are tampered with. Those who knew them and their classmates' memories become confused. Even the deceased themselves are unaware of their own death. This results in the possibility that anyone in the class could be the deceased. But as long as the deceased remains in the class, the fear of death hangs over everyone. To combat this terrifying curse, the classmates of Class 3C, over 26 years, have devised a strategy which involves the entire class collectively ignoring one student. This balances out the additional person and ultimately saves the entire class. Misaki was the chosen student to be ignored in that year. However, Kuchi's appearance disrupted the balance of numbers, prompting the curse to resurface. Despite knowing the truth, Kuchi did not blame his classmates. Instead, he found it easier to interact with Misaki in such a capacity. A few days later, Kuchi and Misaki found a teacher named Tatsuharu, who was a teacher of Class 3C in 1972. Many years later, he became a librarian, but had been keeping an eye on Class 3C. Tatsuharu told them that the deceased Misaki from that year was actually a boy, and the pronunciation of the name Misaki was very similar to many other names. The boy who died tragically years ago also had a name pronounced as Misaki, which led to rumors spreading that the deceased was a girl. Additionally, a girl who passed away in April had the same name pronunciation as Misaki, and happened to be Misaki's cousin. That day, Misaki was just visiting her cousin when she coincidentally met Kuchi. Tatsuharu informed them that the curse would only affect all the students and teachers of Class 3C. as well as the student's relative. The simultaneous appearance of two non-existent individuals in the class brought the total number of students back into balance. This also meant that all the classmates could graduate in good health. But things were not as simple as they seemed. The next day, Teacher Koboji, looking distressed, arrived in the classroom with a black bag. Continuously muttering "I'm sorry," he then took out a kitchen knife from the bag and committed suicide in front of the entire class. The classroom immediately descended into chaos. Before his suicide, Koboji also killed his mother. Investigations revealed that Koboji's mother had been bedridden for years. Furthermore, recent bizarre incidents in the class ultimately drove Koboji to madness. Clearly, the student's plan had failed, and the curse continued to persist. In the aftermath of this incident, a significant portion of Class 3 students took leave, but there were still some brave students who stayed behind. They were determined to find a way to break the curse. The new class president, Izumi, also joined them. They sat together to discuss a strategy. Kuchi told them that his mother was a student of Class 3 in 1972 when the curse began, and his aunt was a student of Class 3 in 1983. Kuchi's mother passed away after giving birth to him, and only now did Kuchi realize that this might be related to the curse of Class 3 over the years. When he returned home that night, Kuchi intended to ask Aunt for more clues, but Aunt had already forgotten that memory entirely. However, she vaguely remembered that there was one year when the curse suddenly stopped midway. Upon hearing this news, Kuchi immediately took Misaki and sought out teacher Tatsuharu. Tatsuharu promptly searched for the records of Class 3C from 15 years ago. Strangely, that year, only 2 students died on the same day, and thereafter, no more accidents occurred. Teacher Tatsuharu mentioned that there was a school-wide shrine visit event held that year, perhaps due to the blessings of the deities. However, subsequent Class 3C cohorts also had similar shrine visits, yet the curse continued to persist. On the other side, other classmates also found new clues. One student's sister works at a bar, where she encountered a person named Matsu, who happened to be one of the students from Class 3C 15 years ago. Matsu was a regular at the bar, and once, while intoxicated, mentioned that he had ended the curse 15 years ago, and had kept a certain item as a memento. Upon hearing this, Sakuragi decided to locate Matsu first. Coincidentally, Kuchi's aunt happened to know Matsu. They were classmates in Class 3. After getting in touch, they arranged to meet at a tavern outside the town. The group immediately headed to the destination. However, due to a sudden change in Matsu's work schedule, he would be able to meet them a bit later. So, the group decided to have some fun at the nearby beach while they waited. Just as they were enjoying themselves by the seaside, Matsu appeared. Kuchi's aunt and Matsu hadn't seen each other for many years, and they wanted to sit down and reminisce about the past. However, both of their memories started to blur. Just then, Kuchi walked over and immediately asked about what happened 15 years ago. Matsu explained that due to the curse, he couldn't recall exactly what that item was, only that it was left at the school. But at that moment, a tragedy occurred. A yacht out at sea suddenly malfunctioned, pulling a classmate who was swimming underwater into its propeller. The classmate's gruesome death instilled fear in everyone present. Even though they had left the town, the curse continued to loom over them. As the curse intensified, students from Class 3 began to die in increasingly bizarre ways, as if everyone's fate had already been predetermined, unable to escape the misfortune brought by the curse. Luckily, they finally found the item Matsu had mentioned, a cassette tape wrapped in paper, with the inscription, "For the Cursed Descendants." The group immediately searched for a tape player to listen to its contents. But in the chaos, Nalia accidentally tore out the tape's magnetic strip. Fortunately, Kisaragi said she could repair it, but it would take at least a week to fix. A few days later, the school organized an event to visit the shrine for prayers. Led by the vice homeroom teacher, Mr. Mikami, everyone was arranged to stay at a sanatorium. And in front of the sanatorium, the whole class took a group photo together. This would be their last summer vacation. Their faces were filled with sorrow, and they placed all their hopes on this prayer, hoping that the deities would bless them. At the same time, the tape had been successfully repaired, and its recording was actually a self-recording by Matsu, detailing the events of August 9, 1983. On August 9th, the students of Class 3C also paid a visit to the shrine and cleaned the surrounding area in advance, sincerely praying each heart hoping that the curse would disappear. However, as they were heading back, suddenly, a downpour began from the sky, and a student using an umbrella was unfortunately struck by lightning, being charred all over. Instantly, everyone panicked, and as they tried to flee, a girl accidentally slipped and fell, plunging off a cliff. At this moment, Kuchi suddenly remembered that he had seen the names of these 2 students in Tatsuharu teacher's notebook, which clearly stated that only 2 students died on August 9th. But in reality, there was another student who died that day. Matsu got into a dispute with a classmate, leading to a physical altercation, where Matsu accidentally killed him. Upon returning to the dormitory, Matsu was so frightened that he couldn't sleep the whole night. The next day, Matsu returned to the scene of the incident, only to find the body missing. Plunging him into complete terror, he cautiously inquired with his classmates, who all claimed there was no such person in their class, and that they didn't know him at all. The teacher informed Matsu that there were 19 students present for the activity, but Matsu distinctly remembered there being 20. Matsu suddenly realized that the classmate he accidentally killed was the extra person in class 3, the deceased. After this incident, the curse suddenly ended, and the memories of all the classmates were also tampered with. Seizing the opportunity before his memory completely faded, Matsu recorded a tape and preserved it. After listening to the tape, they all fell silent. They wanted to identify the deceased and kill him again. The seemingly simple approach, however, proved to be extremely difficult, because they have no idea who the real deceased is. Every person in Class 3C could be the deceased. Kuchi felt the most suspicious, because various accidents started befalling him as soon as he transferred to Class 3C. Misaki provided Kuchi with a definitive answer: he was not the deceased. Before Kuchi transferred, Misaki's sister had already died, and the curse had begun in Class 3C since then. Misaki informed Kuchi that her left eye could see the color of death. Now she could identify who the real deceased was. After the revelation was about to be made, an unexpected event occurred. Naoya burst in, claiming he had accidentally killed someone. The cause was Naoya's suspicion that Kazama was the deceased, as they were childhood friends, but Kazama couldn't recall their past. This led Naoya to believe Kazama was the deceased. A dispute ensued between them, resulting in Naoya inadvertently pushing Kazama down the stairs. In a panic, Naoya wanted Kuchi and Misaki to confirm Kazama's identity. At this moment, suspicion began to pervade throughout the entire building among the classmates. As Kuchi descended the stairs, he immediately saw a classmate struck down on the ground. The perpetrator was the hotel manager, a parent of a deceased student from Class 3. Seeking revenge against all the teachers and students of Class 3, he began setting fires inside the building. Simultaneously, Matsu's recording tape was stolen. Shortly after, a woman's voice echoed through the building's PA system, instructing everyone to listen carefully. The broadcast then played Matsu's recording, detailing the method to end the curse: finding and killing the deceased. Upon hearing this, chaos erupted as classmates began suspecting each other of being the deceased. To survive, they resorted to killing each other. Madness took hold, some turning into murderers while others met various accidents. At this moment, Misaki and Kuchi were also cornered by a classmate wielding a sharp object. However, just as she was about to launch an attack, she was strangled by a wire around her neck. Izumi, typically composed, finally succumbed to emotions upon witnessing her best friend's death, turning on Misaki and Kuchi. However, a sudden lightning strike shattered the window, and the glass shards directly cut Izumi's neck. The curse continues to bring ongoing calamity, and the truth is about to be unveiled. With the ability to see spirits, Misaki led Kuchi to the backyard, where they witnessed the true deceased. Lying on the ground at that moment was none other than the vice homeroom teacher of Class 3, Reiko Mikami, who also happened to be Kuchi's aunt. Kuchi's memories suddenly began to intertwine. His aunt's name is Reiko, the vice homeroom teacher's name is Mikami, and his aunt's full name is Reiko Mikami. Kuchi could hardly believe all of this. Misaki informed Kuchi that there is no vice homeroom teacher position in the school's classes. The extra person in Class 3 is not a student, but a teacher, and Misaki witnessed Reiko being murdered with her own eyes last year. It's just that she only just remembered this memory. At that moment, Kuchi also remembered that he had visited this small town last year to attend Aunt's funeral. Ultimately, Kuchi chose to personally put an end to all of this.